All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another session, another episode of Did You Know? I hope you're all having a good Friday. I personally am. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Adam, and I'm a substance abuse prevention specialist with LAHC, Leaders Advancing and Helping Communities. I'm very grateful that I get the opportunity to educate people like yourselves about ways that we can make our community stronger, healthier, and make our families happier. Last week when we met, I talked a little bit about painkillers and specifically opioids. If you have not checked that out yet, I really recommend that you do. I talk about a lot of useful and important information in that presentation. So this one's going to be a little bit on the same spectrum of that. However, we will be talking about a drug that is a little bit more easily accessible, and for that reason, more of a concern as parents and teachers and medical practitioners are concerned that kids are using this as an easy way to get high. And so today's presentation is going to be about cough syrup. And now, before we talk about cough syrup, first we want to talk about what over-the-counter medication is. I'm pretty sure you've heard the term over-the-counter before, and what that means is that this is a kind of medicine that's available legally, basically at any drug store or pharmacy like Rite Aid or CVS or Walmart, Target. And these kinds of medications, like I said, don't really require a prescription. So your doctor doesn't have to write you a script telling you that you need to take this medication. And that's because it's not very strong. And for that reason, it's not very risky when you take it as recommended and as needed. Now, when we talk about over-the-counter cough syrup or over-the-counter cold medication in general, these kinds of medications are mostly available over-the-counter. However, in severe cases where you might have a very bad fever or any other kind of like uncontrollable coughing, prescription strength is usually recommended, but that's at the discretion of your doctor. And so because they're not mostly prescription, these over-the-counter medications are generally harmless, like I said. However, the reason they can become harmful is because of a compound known as Dextromethorphan, or DXM. This compound is a cough suppressant, and so usually when we cough, it's a reflex from our body to try to get something out of our throat or out of our airways. However, when we have a fever or a cold, that tends to be in overdrive, and so we'll be coughing more than we're really comfortable with. And so Dextromethorphan does a good job of kind of numbing that effect. So this drug was approved by the FDA in the 1950s. And tests have shown that it is relatively safe when you take it at a recommended dose, but when you do take too much of it, it could cause some pretty debilitating or pretty serious and dangerous side effects. Among these are things like confusion, dizziness, even out-of-body feelings where you feel like you are awake, but you feel like you're in a dream. And for some people, this can be very disorienting or unsettling and just outright scary. And you get some physical side effects as well, like rapid heartbeat or blurry double vision. You get stomach pain, nausea and vomiting, numb fingers and toes. Also distorts color and sound. So basically something that's usually red to you would be like orange or darker, or just distorted, so you'll have a hard time distinguishing color and sound. And a classic sign that somebody's been taking too much DXM is slurred speech. And lastly, because this drug also does have some euphoric effects to it, there's a chance that you can become addicted to it, and an even higher chance that you could overdose on this drug by accident. Now, over-the-counter medications that contain DXM can also contain things like decongestants, pain relievers, and antihistamines. These are medications that treat allergy-related congestion, runny nose, sneezing, and fever, and things like that. But when we have a high dose of this combination of DXM and pain relievers or decongestants. This can increase the harmful effects of DXM, and it can cause some pretty serious cases like deadly liver damage. If you watched my live session, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, where I talked about alcohol, I discussed a little bit how the liver is responsible for processing everything that we consume, everything we eat and we drink, and all the medicines that we take as well. And so when these medications are processed by a liver, some of those liver cells responsible for this will die out as a result. And this is very prominent when DXM is used. And this can be pretty deadly too. Among some other really serious side effects are brain damage and seizures as a result of this. You'll also experience heart palpitations or irregular heartbeat or a really fast heartbeat, and that can cause some heart damage over time. You'll also experience a loss of consciousness. This is typically when you overdose on DXM. However, it could happen even if the combination is lethal to you somehow, and so you'll experience an overdose, and that could be fatal. Now, a little disclaimer on the bottom. These medicines are usually mixed with other drugs like alcohol or energy drinks. Excuse me. And this combination can multiply the harmful effects of both the DXM, the medications it may be mixed with, and the alcohol. Another really, really dangerous side effect of dextromethorphan overdose is hyperthermia. And this is when you have a very high fever, and this can be lethal in hot environments or when users are, exercising or playing sports or physically exerting themselves somehow. These high body temperatures are essentially like cooking you on the inside, and so this can quickly lead to dehydration or brain damage or maybe even a coma. And a coma is a state of comatose, which means you're in a prolonged or endless kind of unconsciousness, or you're knocked out for a very long time. However, the quicker this person is taken to a hospital, the easier it's going to be to treat them. Now, what can you do if someone overdoses on DXM? In my last session, I talked about opioids and how there's something called naloxone, which is an opioid antagonist, and it can kind of reverse the effects of opioids. Unfortunately, there's currently no known drugs that can do the same for DXM, and so nothing can really reverse a DXM overdose. However, with immediate hospitalization, a person can be saved. And the way the hospital does this is they'll follow several procedures or steps to try to stabilize a person. The first of which is blood and urine samples and testing. They want to determine how much the person consumed, how much DXM is in their system. I think I need some cough syrup right now. They'll use ventilators for breathing support if the person's having a hard time breathing. In some cases, they might pump their stomach, so they'll insert a tube into their throat and down to their stomach and remove some of that DXM that's still there. And then they'll feed you some activated charcoal, which will absorb the rest of the drug. And then they'll give you a laxative, which will help you push all of that out and expel any remaining DXM in your system. So what about prescription cough syrup? Because we've talked about over-the-counter cough syrup up until this point. Now, prescription cough syrup and prescription cold medication in general is only prescribed when it's absolutely needed, because it contains some pretty powerful stuff. And so typically it'll contain a combination of codeine, which is an opioid, and this presents a high risk of deadly overdose and addiction, and promethazine, which is an antihistamine, and this basically blocks histamines from binding to receptors in your brain. These histamines are chemicals that our immune system will kind of release when we have some kind of allergen in our system. If you have allergies or know somebody who has allergies, they're probably allergic to like pollen or dust or certain foods like nuts or oils and things like that. And when an allergic reaction happens, our immune system releases these histamines, which create allergy symptoms like itchy and runny nose and sneezing and swelling and itchy eyes and watery eyes, hives and skin rashes. And so when we introduce promethazine into our system, it's going to block these histamines from binding to the brain. And another effect of this is that it can also be used as a sedative or a sleeping aid for people dealing with insomnia who are having a hard time going to sleep. Now, this promethazine codeine cough syrup combination is usually mixed with soda, and this combination is sometimes referred to as lean or perp or scissorp. It was popularized by mainly hip-hop and rap artists who have been referencing it since the 1990s, like Lil Wayne and Future and artists like that. And as a result, obviously, this became very popular among younger teens especially. But because these medications typically require a prescription, younger teens are more likely to misuse the Dextromethorphan-based over-the-counter cough medication, only because that's going to be more available legally, and they don't really need a prescription for that. And it's a little bit unsettling. The statistics show that a National Institute on Drug Abuse study found 4.6% of 8th graders, 3.3% of 10th graders, and 3.2% of 12th graders are misusing over-the-counter cough or cold medication. This study was done back in 2020, but you can see the table over here, our bar graph, and cough and cold medicine is just under opioids other than heroin, so like the codeine that we talked about. And lastly, at least 1 in 30 teens has abused over-the-counter cough medicine to get high. And this is usually when the teen builds a tolerance or becomes addicted to this substance. For this reason, you might be looking for some resources, some help, or some advice. And so, like always, I've left some resources for you here at the end. And I will also have all of this information in the description of this video once this session is done. And we do have our phone number down there for LAHC Leaders Advancing and Helping Communities. Our email address is 888-315-5242, or you can email us at info@lahc.org, or visit our website at www.lahc.org. And a quick reminder to parents, hopefully after this session, I was able to inform you or teach you something that you don't know. It is very important with your medications to stow them away properly and to make sure that they're out of reach if you have younger children in the house or somebody who could stumble upon it. And that goes for any kind of over-the-counter or prescription medication that you may have. It's important to securely store those away from younger teens. And so thank you for sticking around with me. I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend, and I will hopefully see all of you next week.